Okay, now please listen here. So you can see that from the title itself, you can understand what is the aim of the topic. You will have to study about oxygen transport as well as carbon dioxide transport, and this is something you have already studied, especially in your high school or plus 2 classes. So that some idea you will have, especially about the oxygen transport, and you have studied about hemoglobin also. So hemoglobin is the oxygen carrying pigment, and that hemoglobin usually has a form known by the name oxyhemoglobin. So it is in the form of oxyhemoglobin that transport of oxygen is not normally is usually carried out. So in coming to the gas transport, there are two different type of gases. One is oxygen and second one is the carbon dioxide. So oxygen is used by our body for meeting the various requirement, varies for the life activities of every cell or tissue. Oxygen is needed. It is by using oxygen they are actually producing the energy also. So oxygen is a very important thing. Without oxygen, cells cannot survive. Second, as a result of the activities, we are producing carbon dioxide which needs to be eliminated or expelled from your body. So these two mechanisms has to be operating in our body for the normal survival. So here you can see that cellular respiration or exchange of gases which are taking place, or you might have studied about glycolysis, Krebs cycle, some idea you may have. And those processes are known by the name cellular respiration, and that is producing the energy. For example, when you are eating some carbohydrate, ultimately, even if it is a banana or a normal food or everything, that is ultimately carbohydrate. That carbohydrate will be broken down into glucose, and that glucose will be again split into different forms of energy. From the glucose we are getting the energy or the ATP. That process is actually conducted by using this oxygen. So that is what is known by the name cellular respiration. So our topic is regarding how oxygen is transported. Here you can see that oxygen, before we go into that, oxygen there are three steps. One is oxygen intake and diffusion. Normally atmosphere will be containing nearly 21% of oxygen. That oxygen we are taking into lungs. From the lungs it will be reaching blood, and from the blood it is carried by our RBC or hemoglobin, and you are getting it in the cells. So this is the normal mechanism. So that is how oxygen is taken into the body, how oxygen will be transported in the blood, and finally how oxygen is released to the tissue. These are the three important things. So coming to the first step, how oxygen intake. We already know, because breathing is the process by which we are taking oxygen into our body. So when we are breathing, our nose is working, and through our nose the gas will be entering into the lungs, and there are different reasons for that. So the lungs normally have a lower air pressure, and because of that, entering of air into the lungs may be easy. So during the inspiration, and that process is what we call inspiration, and this is something you have been studying for a very long time. For example, maybe from smaller classes, lower classes itself, you know what is inspiration and what is expiration. Intake of air is known as inspiration, expulsion of air is known by the name expiration. So as a result of inspiration, or what we call breathing, or we are taking oxygen into our lungs. Then second step is the diffusion. Diffusion across the alveolar valves, and you have also studied about alveoli. So in the case of alveoli, here you can see that alveoli, maybe you have some idea what is an alveoli. So So this structure is known by the name alveoli. See, this is the here you can see that. So that balloon-like structure which is closely covered by number of blood vessels or capillaries, and that balloon-like structure is known by the name alveoli. So inside that alveoli, the air we are breathing in will be finally reaching, and the wall of the alveoli is very thin. So we call it as permeable to oxygen. So through that wall or cell membrane of the alveoli or wall of the alveoli, the oxygen molecule will be diffusing into the what is called blood present in the blood vessel or in the capillary. So this is the normal mechanism by which this blood is diffusing into the blood will be oxygen is diffusing from lungs into the bloodstream. So that idea is known as oxygen intake and diffusion. Now next is coming how oxygen is transported, and that also you have studied, because all these you may be knowing already. So in the blood we have the hemoglobin. So hemoglobin, oxygen binds with the hemoglobin. So, and as a result of that binding of oxygen with hemoglobin, we are getting what is called oxyhemoglobin. I will show you that. So this is the oxyhemoglobin. See, so this is what is happening during oxyhemoglobin formation. See, where is it? See, here there is a picture and you can see that. So when oxygen and hemoglobin are combined with each other, so this is the oxygen and this is the hemoglobin and this is the RBC, and in the RBC there will be hemoglobin will be there. So here you can see that oxygen molecules are attached with the hemoglobin in the RBC, and then that hemoglobin with which oxygen is attached is known by the name oxyhemoglobin. So oxyhemoglobin binding of oxygen with the oxyhemoglobin that is present in the RBC is one of the important steps in the transport of blood. Then formation of oxyhemoglobin. So as a result of binding, we get a molecule known by the name oxyhemoglobin, and they are then transported by the oxyhemoglobin. So hemoglobin is the main pigment that is responsible for carrying. So oxygen cannot easily transport, it needs some vehicle. That vehicle is actually the oxyhemoglobin. So oxygen will attach with the hemoglobin and hemoglobin will be carrying it to different parts of the body. So hemoglobin is already attached with RBC. So this mechanism, so this is the main mechanism by which 98% of our blood is oxygen is transported. Then what happens at the tissue level? So this kind of binding is normally taking place in the lungs, because if you go into the lungs, you can see that lungs has a higher pressure, higher oxygen pressure. The pressure of oxygen within the lungs or with is more higher, and as a result more oxygen will be attaching with the blood. So that is because of higher oxygen pressure. Now what happens at the level of this tissue, at the level of tissues, is that when cells are reaching the oxygen is reaching the cells, at the level of cells the pressure of oxygen is very much lower. So in the cells the oxygen pressure is very lower, and as a result what happens is that oxyhemoglobin will be dissociating. I will show you that. So here you can see that So here you can see this one. So this is how the oxyhemoglobin will be looking. So when they are reaching the cells, at the level of cells, this is oxyhemoglobin, and hemoglobin will be releasing these oxygen molecules to the cells. And the reason for that, cells will be having a lower oxygen pressure. If there is higher oxygen pressure, this kind of splitting of oxygen may not be possible. So it is because the pressure of oxygen, or which we call the partial pressure of oxygen in the cells, is very much lower and then the pressure of the oxygen, the partial pressure of oxygen within the blood. So always you might be knowing that in the case of diffusion, gases always flow from region of higher pressure to region of lower pressure. That is what we call by the name diffusion. So in the cells, because of lower oxygen pressure, this splitting of oxygen and hemoglobin will be taking place, and as a result, oxygen will be released here, and oxyhemoglobin will be then converted into hemoglobin again. So this is what is happening here. Then the next mechanism, so this is the main mechanism by which this oxygen release to the tissues is actually going on. So here there is a vector picture, and here you can see this is the oxygen, and this is the alveoli. This small balloon-like structure is the alveoli. Here you can see oxygen. This closely attached one is a blood vessel or a capillary. So from the alveoli, this oxygen will be entering into the capillaries, and you can see that when before oxygen is entering, see here there is a 40 mm is written. What is the meaning of that 40 mm? When the blood is reaching the capillaries, when the blood is reaching the alveoli, oxygen pressure of the blood is only 40 mm of mercury. Okay, so it is a low pressure. So here there is higher pressure. What is the pressure here? It is, I think, 114 mm of mercury. So oxygen pressure here is nearly 100, more than 100. Here it is only 40. So oxygen from here will be diffusing into the alveoli. And after that, what is happening? You can see that this is the before entering, it was only 40. After this entering of oxygen, you can see that partial pressure of oxygen is increasing to 100 mm. And then we call it by the name oxyhemoglobin. Here they have given violet color, here it is given red color. Because before accepting oxygen, the color of blood will be somewhat violet or not deep red. But here after accepting the oxygen, color will be changing into deeper red or brighter red. So that is why they have shown it like that. So here you can see oxygen from alveoli diffuse into blood. Oxygen then enters the RBC and binds with the hemoglobin, we have already seen. So we have already discussed that nearly 98, or some text will be saying 97. So 98 or 97% of oxygen is transported as oxyhemoglobin. Then here we can see that 3% of oxygen is dissolved in the plasma, while 97% is bind with hemoglobin to form oxyhemoglobin. See here you can see that this is the oxygen, and out of the 100 molecules of oxygen entering, 97 or 98 will be attaching with hemoglobin. Nearly 3 molecules of oxygen will remain in the water portion of the plasma, and that plasma will be carrying it in the liquid form. So that is what is explained here. And this binding is reversible. Reversible means hemoglobin can combine with oxygen forming oxyhemoglobin. Oxyhemoglobin can split back into hemoglobin and oxygen. Earlier I have shown you that. So this is the idea of actually what is known as oxygen transport. Now the second mechanism is the transport of carbon dioxide. So in the case of transport of carbon dioxide, even though amount of carbon dioxide is very little, it still involves a slightly more complicated mechanism. So one is carbon dioxide is a waste material, because if there is too much carbon dioxide in our body, what happens is that this carbon dioxide will combine with the water, and as a result of that, carbon dioxide plus water means carbonic acid. Carbonic acid is an acid, and that will be reducing the pH or increasing the acidic nature of the blood tissues, etc. So it has to be eliminated. Otherwise, there is acid buildup in our body. So that is why the body is eliminating carbon dioxide. So this carbon dioxide has to be eliminated, and for that also hemoglobin as well as plasma is also used. Here you can see the detailed mechanism. I will come to that. So one is as a result of cellular respiration, carbon dioxide is actually a byproduct. Byproduct is not the main product and side product. And carbon dioxide will be diffusing in the capillaries from cell. See here what is happening. There are three methods by which carbon dioxide is normally transported. One method is as bicarbonate ion, and second method is carb-aminohemoglobin, and third method is dissolved in the plasma as a dissolved carbon dioxide in the plasma, and that is only a smaller percentage, nearly 5%, 7% of carbon dioxide is carried in that form. The remaining carbon dioxide or most important route of carbon dioxide transport is in the form of bicarbonate ion, about which we have to see. So in the case of here you can see that there is a picture of how carbon dioxide and oxygen see here you can see this is the alveoli, and in the alveoli what is happening is that when the blood is reaching the alveoli, whatever carbon dioxide present in the blood will be entering into the alveoli, that will be taken out, whereas oxygen present in the alveoli will be entering into the blood. So this is the normal mechanism of that, and here we have to see, but there is a phenomenon how this mechanism is actually taking place, and that is an important mechanism. And here you can see that this is the carbon dioxide. Okay, carbon dioxide is entering into the RBC, and what happens for that carbon dioxide is that it will be combined with the water. Okay, and as a result of combination we are getting we are getting an acid. Here you can see we are getting a carbon dioxide combines with here carbon dioxide combines with the water, forming carbonic acid. Carbonic acid then undergo a splitting, and as a result of splitting we are getting bicarbonate and hydrogen ion. So this is a carbon dioxide plus water, carbonic acid, and for that there is an enzyme is needed which is known as a carbonic anhydrase. So with the help of carbonic anhydrase or the enzyme we are getting carbonic acid. This carbonic acid will be immediately split into bicarbonate ion and also a positively charged hydrogen ion. So you can see that here minus sign, here plus sign. Then what happens? This hydrogen ions will be binding with hemoglobin, and it is forming another product, and that hemoglobin can also be released and as a result oxygen can combine with that. When one more oxygen molecule is combining with that, it will be expelled as oxygen. So this is what is happening to it. Then another mechanism is that carbon dioxide is combining with the this is known as we will see this one. This is better picture. That is some confusion is there. So here you can see that this is the carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide combines with the water, forming carbonic acid. Then it is undergoing splitting and splitting into bicarbonate and hydrogen ion. Okay, what happens to hydrogen? Hydrogen ions will be combined with the hemoglobin, and this is what is happening to bicarbonate ion. Bicarbonate ion negatively charged, and that bicarbonate ions will be will be moving out of the cell membrane. See, you can see that there is an arrow, outward arrow. So problem is that this is a negatively charged ion. So if one bicarbonate ion is moving out of the cell RBC or cell membrane, what happens is that there is a shortage of one negative charge. So as 10 bicarbonate ions are moving out, there will be a shortage of 10 negative charges. So that is the problem. So to compensate that low shortage of negative charge, what the body will be doing is that body will be pumping out equal number of chloride ions, which are also negative charge. So when one bicarbonate ion is moving out, one chloride ion will be coming in, and that mechanism is what we call by the name chloride shift. This is known as a chloride shift, and also known by the name Hamburger phenomenon. Yeah, see, so some chloride shift, also known by the name Hamburger phenomenon, and here you can see that these are the two places where, so this is the normal mechanism by which this entire process is actually going on. So, and in the alveoli, the opposite situation will be taken. So this is the what is happening in the alveoli. In the alveoli, what happens is that bicarbonate will be entering into that. It will be combining with the hydrogen ion and hydrogen ions. Here also then bicarbonate ions will be splitting into carbon dioxide and water. So the carbon dioxide will be carried in this form when it is reaching the alveoli. Here you can see that when it is reaching the alveoli, see here there is somewhere that picture is shown here. So when it is reaching the alveoli, carbon dioxide has to be eliminated from your body. See, so in the alveoli, carbon dioxide has to be eliminated, and for that this mechanism is taking place. It will be carried in the form of bicarbonate ions, and once reaching alveoli, this bicarbonate ions will be splitting into carbon dioxide as well as water, and out of that carbon dioxide will be moving out into the expired air, whereas water will be again used by our body. So this is how the normally this transport of carbon dioxide is taking place. And and what is important is that you have to remember what is known by the name chloride shift. That is when 10 negatively charged bicarbonate ions are moving out, equal number of 10 negatively charged chloride ions are coming in. And there is the phenomenon known as the Bohr effect. Lower pH with higher carbon dioxide decrease the hemoglobin affinity for oxygen. That is also an important thing, how this carbon dioxide will be affecting your body. Then another effect is that deoxygenated blood can carry more carbon dioxide. So this we will be discussing in our another class. For the time being, remember that there are two types of gases. Oxygen transport is there, and also carbon dioxide transport is there. And you should understand how this mechanism of oxygen transport, mainly by hemoglobin. In the case of carbon dioxide also, hemoglobin is the main gas that is responsible for. So we are stopping it today.